Hello everybody, it's CJ, and I've noticed I'm getting just a little bit addicted to YouTube. It's starting to become a little bit of a problem, because the thing is, I watch significantly too much YouTube. It's starting to get a little bit problematic. I've gotten to the point where I have memorized a lot of the ads, and I think that's when it kind of has gone too far, is when you know every ad before it even shows you the ad. That might mean it has gone a bit too far. So that's kind of beside the point. I only have one more quarter of school, and then it is summer, the mystical, magical time of summer, when I have a lot of ideas I want to get to, and I have a lot of big plans for the channel. And I do not count those plans as part of my YouTube addiction, because creating YouTube videos is not the same as watching them. I've asserted that it simply doesn't count. There are still a lot of other things I should be working on, but those aren't things that I want to do. I have some other things I really should be working on, but I am just so looking forward to summer when I have a ton of time and a lot of ideas and I can do all of them. My mom was asking about me getting another job, and I was like, well, I wasn't planning on getting another job, I was planning on doing YouTube. I am the only one in my family who has a most likely delusional belief that YouTube could actually work out to be something big in the future, and they all are like, you're delusional. I'm like, yep, I am delusional. Plus, YouTube is a great excuse to do things that I've kind of always wanted to do. Like, some of the things I want to do this summer are like engineering challenges, kind of. I'm generally working on my content and trying to figure out how I want to niche down or expand or do kind of both at the same time. So it's gonna be good. I really like making YouTube videos. I feel like it's kind of productive, even though no one else does. No one else kind of sees it going anywhere. My mom is very supportive of me doing YouTube, but whenever I ask her anything about YouTube, she will remind me like, oh, as long as it's just a hobby or as long as you enjoy it. Like, yeah, but I'm asking you about SEO. I don't blame her though, because she's just trying to make sure I go through college. My mom is actually very supportive of me making videos, same for my dad, though he has kind of the whimsy side of things, so it's a bit less weird. Just a quick note, since I'm going to be mentioning the B-roll in just a moment, none of the dogs that were walking are ours. 2 of them are owned by my mom's friend, and 2 of them she is dog sitting. Like, for example, right here, when we were out on a walk and there was an ant colony, and my mom said, here's some B-roll for you. She's quite supportive of me making videos, just doesn't believe in the this could go anywhere side of things.
There's some B-roll for you. Look at all the ants.
So many ants.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, we always get ant colonies like that.
Oh my gosh.
I've been considering the future of YouTube, both as with the platform and with my usage of the platform. It is kind of an interesting thing to consider. I mean, first off, I don't think YouTube is going anywhere anytime soon, because YouTube is just a really big video platform, and there isn't really anything truly competing with it. But it is an interesting thing that I've been considering of what are the possibilities with YouTube in the future, and it's kind of the chances of success are slim to none. However, YouTube is something that just fills me with warm fuzzies and kind of makes me really hopeful for my future. If I can get through school, it's I could do this. And I've just kind of been considering what it looks like, because it's something I've thought about a bit. YouTube is something that really makes me happy. It fills me with warm fuzzies, which is why I'm doing it. And I think anyone who is going to try and be serious on YouTube really has to feel that way about it, especially if you're making entertainment content, because there's no traction in the beginning. And I know that, and I'm not discouraged by that short term. But it is kind of interesting thinking about it years down the road, of the idea of well, I should probably have an actual legit career plan. That's kind of the scary thing of I'm going to be going to college soon. And college, you're supposed to know what you want to do with your life. But it is an interesting thing to try and think about for life plans. It's like, well, what do I want to like major in? Like, what do I want my degree to be in? How am I going to look back on doing YouTube? It's an interesting thing because I think a lot of people like quit early on. So it's the whole like, well, I know it's going to be like 5 years before I know if this is a legit possibility. And there's the whole, it's a really stupid analogy because it doesn't make any sense, but it's like, shoot for the moon, and if you miss, you'll land among the stars. It's like, well, technically, after several million millennia of drifting through space, like, the stars are significantly farther away. It's kind of a dumb analogy, but I think the point still kind of stands. Shoot high, and then if you miss, you'll hit something. Like, there's this idea of it's better to aim high and miss than to aim low and hit. It's an interesting thing of there's this crazy dream with just a sliver of possibility. It's not uncharted territory, but it's not very well charted territory. And it's like, well, like, is this possible? The interesting thing to me is there's not really a whole lot of encouragement, which is fair enough because I don't think there's really anyone who recognizes YouTube as a real job. Though most of the discouragement I've encountered has not been very helpful. I am the kind of person where I will consciously seek out discouragement, like opinions contrary to my own. And it's like I looked it up the other day, and it's like why you shouldn't be your own boss, and then almost all the articles were like why you should be your own boss. I'm like, no, I'm looking for the opposite. And most of the negative stuff I encountered were based on the idea of you never stop working. It's like because you are your own boss, you decide how much you work, which for most people who are driven enough to be their own boss means 24/7. And I realized I don't think it matters what my job is. I'm probably going to be thinking about it constantly. I'm the kind of person where it's like I had a fast food job, kind of like the most like menial, like you shouldn't have to think about work outside of work, and I still did. And that's part of the reason I quit is like, okay, this is taking up way too much time and energy, like a disproportionate amount based on what I'm actually doing, because like my brain's going to be taken up by it anyway. So it's like I'd rather be working on a passion project where that's a positive rather than a negative. And like obviously any passion project you're turning into a career is going to have the parts you don't like as much. YouTube just absolutely fills me with warm fuzzy feelings, which is why the current thing I'm trying to consider is how much can I put into YouTube and continue to love it? And how much can I put into YouTube without regretting it if it never goes anywhere, because statistically that's the most likely outcome. There's this idea I see floating around about YouTube. You see it in kind of the motivational compilations where there's this concept of like, I knew I would succeed even though no one has ever done it before. And although I don't have that type of confidence with YouTube or anything really, I noticed kind of a unique opportunity. I tend to circulate through hobbies quite quickly, and I realized YouTube is kind of a really good excuse to try new random things that aren't really justifiable on their own. Like there are a lot of things that just don't seem worth the time to learn, and YouTube is a great excuse, and it's something I can do for a long time even if I can't ever make a career out of it. I've also been considering the odds of success on the platform. And the interesting thing is that both seems like, well, if you try enough times, you are bound to succeed eventually, and also the just because you are going to succeed eventually mathematically does not mean it will work out in your lifetime. Kind of the monkeys typing out Shakespeare thing. I don't think many people in their right mind would consistently work hard to publish content for years and see no return. So I think the vast majority of channels, even the vast majority of channels with videos, are just people trying to conveniently share video content, which is why I don't think YouTube will ever die, because we'll always need something for that. Like I think the vast majority of like YouTube channels are just like people sharing random things. You know, someone makes a project for school and they have to share it with their teacher, so they turn it into a YouTube video and send them the link, or filming a birthday party to send it to their grandparents. I think that's the most significant part of YouTube. And then you have the casual channels of people who like upload when they want to and don't like put a lot of thought into content and are doing it just for fun. And it's like, no shame on those channels, like absolutely none at all. Like I think that's great. Of like, if you're just doing YouTube as a hobby, it's like I'm pretty much doing YouTube as a hobby. I take it a bit seriously, mostly because it forces me to actually be creative routinely, which I think is just better for me. Like it's better for me to maintain a hobby. I tend to go between different ideas quite rapidly, and that's probably not great. But maintaining a schedule is supposed to increase your chance of success because, frankly, you have just a lot more chances at success. You're rolling the dice a lot more times. To me, success seems almost certain and impossible at the same time. YouTube as a career is very improbable, but YouTube as a hobby, it's like, that's certain. It's like, as long as you decide to do it, then YouTube can be your hobby. One idea I really like, and kind of a reason I'm glad I didn't try and niche down too early, is realizing that because my channel is kind of based on my personality, that it could be a long-term solution to have a lot of random content, and YouTube is just a really great excuse to learn things and do fun things and be goofy under circumstances you normally wouldn't socially be allowed to. It's like, normally if you're an adult, like you shouldn't like go to Disneyland, but if you're doing a YouTube video on it, then it's completely appropriate. So that's kind of something to look forward to. Of like, even if I have a boring corporate job, there's still the opportunity to learn random things and do random things for the sake of YouTube. I see kind of three potential main outcomes for YouTube, like down the road, like 5 years or so. So either I am really, really happy that I stuck with it and committed myself to it because it allows me to advance my life in other ways. Either the slim chances I can actually make a career off of YouTube, or just being able to use my channel as a portfolio for like a job I really love, or just being a really good hobby or a side gig or something like that. Then kind of a secondary thing of, I'm happy I continued doing it but kind of lowered the dedication a bit and it just kind of sits as a hobby, as something I'm just happy to do. Or the third option, which I think is unlikely but I have to recognize anyway, is regretting my decision and wishing I spent my time in a more traditional, like better way of studying or getting a summer job or something. And that's the thing that keeps me up at night a little bit. And then there's also a very likely negative outcome that I don't like to acknowledge, of just that I eventually quit. And that's the tough part, and the thing that kind of scares me about YouTube is because you really don't know how you're going to feel about it in the future, and it takes years to know how well your channel is going to do. And I think I have the dedication to continue at least on a decent schedule for that long, because I'm used to school where random people are just like, hey, you have to spend hours of your life doing this thing, like it or not. So that's kind of my baseline for dedication. However, that's a thing I have to acknowledge, of either I quit and don't regret it, or I quit and do regret it. One thing I'm considering as I think about these future outcomes is how I feel towards my past self for my previous YouTube attempts, because this is actually my third attempt on the platform. I had one which was like a podcast thing that I did when I was like 7, and then I did gaming stuff and I made like 5 videos. And I wonder what would happen if I could go back and if I could keep up with that. But the thing is whenever, even in metaphor, you're messing with the past, it gets confusing, because I don't know what the ramifications of that would be. Like, part of me is like, oh, I wish I had just kept up with it. But then would I have just developed a resentment for YouTube because I wasn't at a point where I would like the parts of it that I like now? It's like, would I hate the statistics and be like, I don't want to do this seriously, and just have given up? And I just don't know. One thing that I'm really grateful for is I have a couple years to work with this quite seriously as my main pursuit, rather than just keeping up with stuff, because I'll be in school. I'll be doing PSEO next year, and then college, which I'll probably be doing 3 years of college rather than 4 because of doing a year of full-time PSEO, but it might end up being 4, so I might have 5 entire years of school. But at least I have 2 years where I can kind of see if this is maybe a feasible option. Because like college, I'm really debating. It's like, well, do I want to go with some nice, safe major and go with like business or something? Or do I want to go with something YouTube-y and go with like film? Or do I want to go with something in the middle and go with like marketing of something that's going to be useful in either one? That's what I'm currently inkling towards, because, you know, trying not to put all my eggs in one basket. But it is a interesting thing to consider, and I'm just really glad that I have more time, because this is something that takes a lot of time to build up, and it's not something you can just launch into and say, well, I've never tried this before, but I'm gonna try and make it my career. It's like, well, good luck with that. It's very interesting and, dare I say, fun to shift from a true addiction in watching YouTube to making YouTube. This is something where, like, my dad being the whimsical one, who also does like podcasts and stuff and did video stuff in like college, where he was saying like, well, instead of just watching YouTube, like, how about you make YouTube? And I think without that push significantly earlier on than when I actually started making YouTube, but without that being influential in my childhood, I would not have done this. And it's very, very interesting to just see where it's going. And I'm trying to be more okay with really having no idea where it's going, because growth on YouTube is very non-linear. It's very interesting. It's like I'm shifting from consuming to creating. So in and of itself, that's a good shift. It's productive compared to what I would be doing by default, which is probably watching YouTube. It's also very interesting to switch from consuming content on YouTube to making content on YouTube, because it changes the way you consume content on YouTube. Like, I will study things. It's like I'll see a weird thing. It's like, oh, that's a really interesting thumbnail design, or like, oh, that's a weird thing that like all their videos are this length or something. I just will study things. It's like you watch things in a very different way after you start making content. I have significantly more respect for big YouTubers because I'll like study their stuff. Like MrBeast, I didn't used to watch until after I started making videos, and I was like, oh, like I understand why he has so many subscribers, because like his editing is so good. Like, it is so fast, and it's something you don't really notice until you realize how difficult it is to do. I'm playing the long game. I'm not gonna say I've been playing the long game from the beginning, though I did kind of start this channel with the intent of kind of playing the long game, though there's definitely been and will continue to be some times of just kind of messing around with stuff. But I have definitely been thinking about what decisions are kind of irreversible on the channel, particularly about personal information stuff. It's like once you put something out there, you can't take it back. And so that's something I've been thinking about, like, what precedents do I want to set? I don't know. I think that's kind of the correct way to go about things, not in a like, oh, you can't have fun because you have to consider like if this becomes popular, but it's like you don't want success to be your worst outcome thing. Would it be a perk or a downfall if a million people saw the video? It's like, if it's a downfall, then you might want to rethink the video a bit, and not in the like, oh, it's cringy, like if I'd known it would go viral, then I would have, you know, done this and this to make the quality a little bit better. That takes a lot of time, so I didn't bother doing it. Like, not those kind of things, but just the, like, if this is something you're known for, would you hate that? Because, like, a lot of viral videos kind of end up being that way, which is kind of sad. I feel bad for people who unexpectedly go viral, where it's kind of like you never want anyone to see that, and then, like, millions of people saw it, and it's like, well, like, great. That's your reputation. So, yeah, that's something, just kind of throwing that out there for people who do have YouTube channels, which is a large percentage of my current subscribers. So, you know, all 5 of you, hello. I would just really recommend that you consider the long game in your channel and what you put on your channel. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope you learned something in this video. I hope this provided value to you. I will catch you in the next video. Bye!